And I am alive talking about movies once again. Guess what? Tonight we talk about live action remakes because we got three of them that I can name that came out this year. There are a lot more. Like last year, we had The Lion King that was terrible. We had so many others, like there was The Little Mermaid at some point. Yeah, they just keep pumping out these live action remake. And you know what? Because they came out this year, I was like, you know what? I will be covering that. So I ended up watching All to Train Your Dragon, the original flick, the original animated movie. And I ended up watching the sequels and I ended up watching the remake. Now, among all of these remakes we had this year, and I'd say the ones I've seen, that was the best one by far. We also had Lilo and Stitch, and I do think the original piece of art was amazing. The sequel, not so great, and the remake, as you can expect from a remake, it wasn't that great. And Snow White, well, Snow White changed so much. It's not 1937, right? Right. Rachel Ziegler. Now, Rachel Ziegler comment aside, I do think she was actually good in the role. So, this is the topic for today, live action remake. This mainstream movie reviews will be a bit different. There's no Rotten Tomato comment. It's more like rewind. It's more like an analysis of, are the live action remake good or bad? What's the formula? How they should have been made? So that's the discussion for today. I will still be reviewing all of these three remakes, starting with Snow White, because Snow White was the first one to come out this year. With that being said, this is the perfect time for this. Here we are, the first topic, Snow White. Again, we had Lilo Stitch, Snow White, and How to Train Your Dragon, so I will spoil the entire thing. And I will be honest with this Snow White review. I actually decided to watch it against my will to some extent. I was like, you know what? I will watch it, but I will wait. I won't watch it the moment it comes out. I didn't want to be a grifter that just complains about a Snow White that's not so white. I didn't want to do that, and I will be honest. I I was really occupied at that time. I wanted to review so many other things, other movies I was actually interested to talk about. But then I hear about a Lilo and Stitch movie that's a remake, and the How to Train Your Dragon that's a remake. So I was like, you know what? I will wait for the end of the year to actually cover all of these three in the same discussion. So this is the Snow White discussion right now. Now, here's my thought. And I will compare it to the original because I ended up watching the original right after watching this bloodbath of a movie. Now, as a child, I did watch Snow White a long time ago. I was a child. I don't remember how I felt. With that being said, on my most recent watch, I liked it. That was a great movie. But then came out the live action remake. Not so great. Let's get into the why. So, my first issue with the remake of Snow White, the first musical number was filler. It didn't push the characters or the plot. The second issue, Gal Gadot did a terrible job in the acting department. And I know it's certainly not the directing because she's not a great actress. She's very limited, and I will be honest, I think she's hired only based on her beauty. And it's fine, it's Hollywood. Like Sydney Sweeney, is also casting most of the case because she is beautiful, and it's fine. We also have other actors like Charlie Cox. I think he was hired in most of his case because he looks like a manly man. Outside of that, well, I know we can name so many other actors. John Bertal is someone that's in shape. He is muscular, but I don't think he is the best actor there is, yet he still gets so many jobs. So it goes both ways. You're good looking, or you're muscular, you tick some box, you get job. So this is what we got with Gal Gadot. Now, my third issue with this Snow White that was made this year. The evil queen was a weak villain once again. I I can't remember outside of her jealousy. That's the trope with that character. Well, what really does stand out? Nothing. It's a bit unfortunate. I wish we had more to go through with this. My fourth issue with Snow White. Most of the attempts at humor didn't work. My fifth issue with Snow White. The Evil Queen first musical number was dreadful. Issue number 6. The dwarves were forgettable and weak. My seventh issue. The musical number during the cleaning scene was filler. The eighth issue. Another filler musical number. The ninth issue. The movie is too crowded with characters and not everyone was needed, especially the rebels. So, yeah, I will be blunt and honest with this movie. I think the musical aspect was probably the worst part of it. And again, the original had the musical, but I feel like it pushed the story and it was actual good music, and you didn't ask an actress to sing in a language they are not used to. There are so many things wrong with the new Snow White. And I got a side note here. Again, it's not really an issue, it's more like a commentary on the movie substance. So they completely took out the motherhood aspect the original had. Snow White in the original felt like a mother. She did what mother do. She took care of the dwarves. And that was charming. And because she took care of them when they didn't take care of themselves, that was interesting because then it makes sense they would bond with her and care for her and be sad when she's poisoned. Now, with this remake, we don't get any of that. And the dwarves, I don't remember any of them. So maybe that's another issue we can point out. I think the Snow White movie is not so great. The remake. The original was amazing. So let's get into the likes of the new Snow White because I won't be only negative. There are a few enjoyable parts. I think Rachel Ziegler was entertaining. Snow White questioning if she was going to be ready was depicted in the second musical number. So the second musical number is actually probably the best part when we speak about musical numbers. I think the second one did work. The next thing to say, the movie was competent at showing how merciless the queen was. The movie was competent at showing how gentle Snow White was. The action was entertaining when there was action, and that's it. I think Snow White wasn't great. The original is a classic. The original is a must-see animated movie. Why did they feel they needed to remake that one? Money. That's the only explanation I got. And it's kind of funny because I don't know. I don't think it made that much money, but that will be for the later segment once we are done reviewing each single movie. We will compare them and explain why these bombed, why these succeeded. And again, I don't know these numbers. I do have pages ready for that segment. So now, with that being said, let's go over the second remake, Lilo and Stitch. So Lilo and Stitch is a far more recent movie. You may not have heard it, but I will tell you this. It was a movie of my childhood. As a kid, I liked it a lot, and I'm sure a lot of other kids, maybe a bit younger, liked it, and maybe teenager at that point also liked it. I think the original piece of art of Lilo and Stitch is amazing, and I think it will be regarded as a classic in 20 years. Maybe not at the same extent as Snow White, but it's one of these movies from the 2000s that I do think people will remember because that was a very fun animated movie. It was a breath of fresh air. It was new. It was good. But then we got the remake. The remake wasn't made by the same person. And the same goes for Snow White because, of course, if we make a remake 80 years later, chances are the person that made the original probably died. It's just logical to say it, except if they crossed the century and they were very, very young. But even there, even there. So Lilo and Stitch, the remake, was made 20 years after the original. So the true question I'm asking myself is, why didn't you pick the same person? You should have. This is what he all to Train Your Dragon did. They picked the same guy. And maybe because it's only a 10 years gap and not a 20 years gap, so it's easier, but still, we don't have the same cook in the kitchen, we don't have the same messaging, we don't have the same movie. And that's fine, that's a remake, I guess. But if you like the original movie and then you end up with this, you're disappointed. It feels like a watered down, a worse version of what the other one was. And it's unfortunate. So let's get into Lilo and Stitch. Oh, by the way, I just realized Snow White, I had given it a 3.5 out of 10. It's one of the worst movie I've seen this year. So, yeah. To get back to Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch, I had a few issues. I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie, to be honest. I didn't hate it, I didn't like it. It just was a movie that I watched. That's it. But I like the animated flick, the original one. I liked it a lot. The remake, not as much. So let's get into the issues with Lilo and Stitch, the remake. Attempts at humor were bad during the first meeting with the social worker. Weird dialogue, again, the first meeting with the social worker. Acting wasn't great, more bad humor. So I only had 4 issues, which is half what Snow White had. That's an achievement. Now, I will admit there are a few things to enjoy about Lilo and Stitch the remake. Entertaining opening scene. The aliens had charisma. The sisters were likable. Stitch, Path of Destruction, was entertaining. The alien using human forms was fun. Stitch was entertaining. Stitch burning the place was kind of cool. The chaos in the house was entertaining. The surf scene was okay. The action was okay. The ending was cool. Stitch growth into liking Lilo was great. A decent team of family. Well shown how the aunt was unfit. And I've seen another very interesting video comparing both approach to family. Well, the original had the sister fighting to be in the life of Lilo, and in the remake, she just wanders off and goes study elsewhere. It's a product of both times. The 2000 family was still kinda valued. Now we value career and job and study over family, and it's a bit unfortunate. This is the downfall of Western society, but that's a commentary for another day. Now, the Lilo and Stitch remake, well, I will say it's a massive downgrade. It's nowhere near as good as the original. I think the original is a masterpiece. That remake is just a 7.5 out of 10. It's still quite high because I don't think it's a terrible movie. I didn't connect well with it, but hey, that's a movie out there. And now, this is the perfect time for the next movie, being How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon. So, again, I said it. It's the same guy behind both movie, the original and the remake. I think it's a winning formula. I also think making a remake 10 years after the original came out, is it really needed? It's just a cash grab. It's just a cash grab. It's a bit unfortunate, but that's how the industry has become. Anyhow, that remake was my favorite remake. It was very good. And I've seen other remake of other stuff like The Stranger, that was last year, but there's a sequel this year. I cannot wait for it to be on DVD so I can watch it. But regardless, we also had another remake being I Know What You Did Last Summer that was terrible. So I think the remake department, How to Train Your Dragon, is the formula. It was a very good movie. It was a great adaptation. It felt like the animated movie, but they added a bit more meat, a bit more action, a bit more moment for us, the viewer, to bond with the cast and characters. We need that more often. So let's get into my issues. I don't have that many, but I have a few issues with How to Train Your Dragon. My first issue, the CGI wasn't all great, especially nighttime and early in the movie. My second issue, the attempt at humor in the arena weren't great. I think it has to do with the direction. Maybe it's the actors, I don't know. So also see a similar pattern where Lilo and Stitch had terrible dialogue. And here, one of my few issues with How to Train Your Dragon is maybe not the dialogue, but the humor. It's very, very similar in close tight. But yeah, I see a pattern here. I see a pattern. With that being said, How to Train Your Dragon, the remake. Is it too soon? I do think so, but it is a great movie. I really enjoyed. So let's get into my likes. The main character was enjoyable. The action was entertaining. The father and son scene saying the lead isn't a monster was kind of cool. Well shown. The lead didn't have the strength to take lives. The arena was entertaining. More entertaining arena fun. The lead feeding fish to Toothless was funny and enjoyable. The lead succeeding at patching up Toothless was cool. The lead wasn't the strongest, but he was the smartest to realize dragons didn't like some kind of fish. The lead training with Toothless was fun. The ride with Astrid and Toothless was entertaining. The lead humiliating himself to preserve dragon lives was cool. The adult and the kids preparing for the final showdown was fun. The final showdown was fun. Astrid eating teats was kind of fun. Astrid and the lead ending up together felt earned. The dad realizing he was wrong was kind of cool. This thing doesn't have blind spot was a great payoff. That was very funny. The lead and the Black Dragon were both unfit since they couldn't do what their group was raised to do: slay dragon, flying. Team of not being someone you're not. These were all things we had in the original as well. They just came back. And you know what? They were done well in both cases. I do think How to Train Your Dragon, the sequel, is great. Again, it's the best remake I've covered on this channel. It's one of the best remake I've seen. How to Train Your Dragon is a 9.5 out of 10 for me. Far better than the other two, and I highly recommend. So now this is the segment where we dive deep into what did they do at the box office and what could be my explanation to it. But again, I didn't study economics, or I studied a bit of cinema many years ago, but not enough to be a specialist. Anyhow, let's get into it. Let's do that. I will screen share, so we will start by analyzing with the Snow White flick. There we go. Snow White. So we will cover the distribution and all of the good jam, if we can call it that way. So Snow White 2025, it came out in March. So that was the first one that came out this year. That's why we covered it first. Directed by Mark Webb. Screenplay by Erin Cassida Wilson, based on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by Disney, Snow White by the Brother Grimm. Produced by Mark Pat, Jared LaBeouf. Starring Rachel Zegler, Andrew Burnap, Gal Gadot. Cinematography, Mandy Walker. Edited by Mark Singer, Sarah Brushtar. Music by Jeff Moreau. Production companies Walt Disney Picture, Mark Platt Production. Distributed by Walt Disney Studio Motion Picture. Release date March 12th in Alcázar of Segovia. I don't know where that thing is. March 21st, 2025 in the USA. Running time 109 minutes, so an hour and like uh 40 59 minutes, roughly that, almost 2 hours. Wow. Country United States, language English. Budget 240 million to 270 million. Box office 205 million. That movie is officially a bomb. My biggest explanation is I don't think it's great. And again, I will repeat the grade I've given to that movie because I apparently forgot to mention it in the review. 3.5 out of 10. I think it's a terrible movie, and most of the reviews I've heard didn't like it. There's a content creator I enjoyed, the Advocate. She is great. She's a feminist, and she liked that movie, but she is not that much of a heavy critique on movies. Maybe she sees a lot, and her channel is just not about it. But I suspect she doesn't see many movies, and that movie is very much a feminist propaganda tool. So of course, a feminist would like that movie a lot. So it goes to their bias. But outside of her, I don't know anyone that's praising that movie, and even some very left-leaning people I know that watch lots of movies are like, it's not the worst thing, it's not the best thing. And I will agree with these people. I've seen worse. Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey is clearly worse than this thing. Anyhow, I think it's a lot of factors. People didn't care about Snow White. They didn't like Rachel Zegler comments. And do we really need another Snow White movie? I think it's also because cinema in general are dying. I also think it's because people have Disney Plus and they're like, you know what? Why should I bother going at the theater? So this is a big risk there. When you got a streaming service, when you got that, what's the point of going at the theater? You know, I'm a hardcore theater fan. That's why I go at the theater like almost weekly. I didn't go last week because there was no true big new release I wanted to see. Well, we have Sisu 2, Road to Vengeance or something. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any theater in my area that will play it. That's the thing. But usually I am at the theater almost every week. But I know I'm not the normal guy. I do review on YouTube. I'm passionate to rewind. I enjoy a lot movies. Thank you, Cole. Without you, I don't think I would have developed that much the passion, the love for cinema. But it's me. And knowing that movie would be digital very fast, I didn't want to support it in the theater. I also think it was a product of greed. It didn't deserve my money. That's exactly how I felt. And again, I will reiterate, I do think Rachel Zegler was really good. She was the best part of that movie. But that movie was dog shit. That's the thing. And that's why I don't think it did well. Also because streaming platform. So let's get into the next one. Because there's the next one. The Lilo and Stitch one. Did it perform better? Did it perform worse? Let's get into it. Lilo and Stitch. It came out in May. Dean Fleischer Kemp. Screenplay by Chris Kikita, Bright, Mike Van Weiss. Dang! Okay. Cannot pronounce any of these names. Lilo and Stitch production. Produced by Jonathan L. Rich, Dan Lin, starring Sydney Elizabeth Ogodong, Billy Mentionzen, Anna Whittingham. I think that's the only one I really heard about it, but I can't remember from what. Chris Sanders, Courtney B. Vance, Zach Galifianakis, Maya Keitawa. These names, folk, where they are coming from, I have no clue, I have no idea. Cinematography Nigel Block. Edited by Adam Gerstil, Philip J. Bartel. Music by Dan Romer. Production companies Walt Disney Picture Right Back. Distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Picture. Release date May 17, 2025, El Capitan Theater. May 23rd in the USA and Canada. Running time 108 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget 100 million. And that one is a massive success with 1.38 billion. It's one of the most successful movie this year and probably in many years. Wow. That actually shocked me. And I will be honest with you, I didn't really want to support that movie, so I didn't watch it in the theater when it came out. My sister is the right age for that movie, and she had seen the animated flick, and she was like, bring me there, and it just didn't happen. I have no regrets because I think that movie is just a cash grab. It's not a movie I would support. But I did bring her to see Paddington, the new Paddington. I actually want to see the other Paddington after watching that Paddington, and she liked the Paddington movie. Um, anyhow, to get back to Lilo and Stitch. Well, I can see how it made money because again, I don't think it's a terrible movie. It's far better than Snow White, and I think it was well received in general. That's why it made money. And I guess it didn't get the same kind of scrutiny because we didn't have anyone saying, "Oh, the other piece of art it's based on is dated." Because I do think Rachel Ziegler comment on the original didn't only impact the anti-woke crowd, but it also impact maybe some of the fans that are more like left-leaning or center, and they're like, I get why she's saying that. I agree with what she's saying, but I don't like that comment, and therefore I don't want to see the movie. So now with the Lilo and Stitch, I don't know any drama around it. So I think it's a big factor on why it made so much money. And it's also May. May, it's near the end of the spring. It's almost the summer. So maybe people have more money than at the start of the year. I don't know. March, it's also freaking cold, and you don't always want to go out. So these are factors. I think from January to probably March to April, it's not a great idea to release movie. They should still do it because I don't want everything to be cramped up from May to the end of the year, but like release your lower budget movie around that time. This is what I think they should do. If you want to make money off of a movie, well, release it in a better season. I think May was a far better timing. The other factor is look at the budget. It's half the budget of Snow White. So it's far easier to make back the money. Maybe the studio should consider giving that kind of budget instead of like two thousand million or something like that. It it times are hard, folks. The economy sucks, especially in Canada, and Canada is far worse than the USA, but this is what it is. So, without further wait, let's get into the final one, being How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon. Dean Dubois directed and made the screenplay. Produced by Mark Platt, Adam Seagill, starring Mason Dennis, Nico Parker, Gabriel Owell, Julian Dennison, Brolin James, Ari Tewadin, Peter Seraphonic, Nick Frost, Gerald Butler. Gerald Butler and Nick Frost are probably the only two familiar names. Unfortunately, I think I can't point out which movie is exactly. Cinematography, Bill Pope, edited by Wyatt Smith, music by John Powell, production companies Universal Pictures, DreamWorks Animation, Mark Platt Production, distributed by Universal Pictures. Release date April 2 at CinemaCon, June 13 in the USA. Running time 2 hour 5 minutes, country USA, language English, budget 150 million, box office 636.2 million. So I see that movie as a success. It's not as good as Lilo and Stitch in terms of money making. However, I think it's the timing. That movie came out at the same time as 28 years later. It came out very close to Jurassic World, Superman, and Fantastic Four. It was like buried in the middle of a sea of movies. We also had the Karate Kid just previously. And actually, Lilo and Stitch compete directly with Karate Kid, which is surprising. I just realized that. I think another factor is, well, this is a remake from a movie that came out 10 years ago, so maybe there was no hunger for such movie, and that was the third remake this year. So again, it didn't make money, but it didn't make as much as the second movie. But again, it made money back. So you see, lower the budget of your movie, you will have more chance on making your money back. And I think Lilo and Stitch did impact that one for sure. Because Lilo and Stitch came out before. And maybe they were craving more for Lilo and Stitch because that's like 20 years gap instead of 10 years gap. I think 20 years gap between remakes makes a lot more sense than like 10 years or 15 years. I think it's 15 years. Anyway, that's how I felt. Now, long story short, think this is what happened. Bad press impacted Snow White. The movie was terrible. It didn't do well. Lilo and Stitch did very well. And How to Train Your Dragon did very well. And I see a common thing between Lilo and Stitch and the Dragon movie. They are both lower cost movie. So it was far easier for them to make the money back. The other thing is the press. There was no bad press around Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. So it's far easier to sell movie when you don't have a bad press waiting on it. Now I think advertisement is great. I think press interview are great, but you need to muscle your actors. Because if they pull a Rachel Ziegler, dang, people won't like it. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, they won't like it. Um, so yeah. Um, that's how I feel, man. That's how I feel. I think live action remakes, you should wait at least 20 years. You shouldn't be make rewind. You shouldn't be putting too much money in it. Times are tough. People don't want to always go at the theater. And if everyone tried to make a blockbuster, we will have a lot of commercial failures because not everyone wants to see everything. That's the big takeaway. I think the big studios, they should really look at the map, what comes out, and they should wait. It's always better waiting for a better timing than just releasing a movie thinking you will beat your competition when it's really luck. So again, make sure your actors involved in the project, they don't wander around and give a bad rep to your movie. I'm for free speech and freedom of expression and that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. Let's be honest, people will judge you if you are in a press tour criticizing the original piece of art. You will turn off people from everywhere, from every belief. They will see you and you're like, why should I go watch that movie of that whiny person? So again, it's not like she cannot say that. She can say whatever, but here's the thing. People will speak with their wallet. That's the consequence. It's unfortunate, but this is how it goes. So I think that's the biggest explanation on why Snow White didn't do as well as the other two. With this stream is about to end. So this is the outro. I will have a timestamp everywhere after this stream. What comes next on the channel? Tomorrow, Smallville. Friday, the political stream will happen. And next week, I will have new mainstream movie review covering a new movie that will most likely come out Friday if there's anything new coming up. With that being said, I am out. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one. Take care.